Shabbat Shalom, my friends. Well, this week our Torah conversation might feel just a little bit like describing Alice as she falls down a rabbit hole and ends up in Wonderland. Things are a little bit strange now in our sacred calendar, and more than a little disconcerting when we look at our core texts. Curiouser and curiouser. So how do we greet each other today? Not the way that you might think. Chag Pesach Samayach might work after all. We are in the midst of the festival of Passover. The two Sedarim have been concluded. Oh, oops, here we go down that rabbit hole. Or maybe your family only observes one Seder. Or maybe your family postpones Seder until the nearest weekend so that more members of the family might be able to attend. However it works for you, all would agree that we are in the middle of the festival, a celebration that will end after 7 days. That is, of course, if you live in Israel. Or after 8 days if you are Americans, observing 2 beginning days of Passover and 2 ending days. Or unless you are Reformed Jews in America who generally observe 7 days. Consistency is not always a heavily desired commodity within Judaism. In any event, the middle days are called Chol HaMoed, which means the weekday of the festival or the intermediate days of the festival. So we would all agree that this Shabbat is Shabbat Chol HaMoed Pesach. And therefore, if we wish people Chag Pesach Samayach, it's not totally correct. Look, you could say Good Yontif and get away with everything. But during these intermediate days, Sephardic Jews and many Israelis of various origins will prefer to say Moadim L'Simcha, and the proper response is Chagim Uzmanim L'Sason. A little bit more complicated. But as we continue to tumble down that rabbit hole, perhaps nibbling something off of a shelf or speaking with a cat as we drop past, we notice some other strange things. We are told that we have now entered the period of the counting of the Omer, a period lasting 7 weeks and ending up with the next festival on our sacred calendar, Shavuot. Okay, so we count the Omer. But what's an Omer? Well, it's a sheaf of grain. The term refers to a grain ritual that was offered during the Second Temple period. If we didn't count the Omer, we would never know when Shavuot would take place, because the exact date of Shavuot is not found in the Torah. But at least we know when to start counting the Omer, right? Well, not exactly. Most Jews start counting on the 2nd day of Passover, but Karaite Jews begin counting at the end of the Sabbath that falls during the festival. The teachers of Jewish mysticism find rare power in the 49 days of the Omer to help us achieve spiritual cleansing. But that, my friends, is a rabbit hole all of its own. Are you dizzy yet? Hold on. There's more to come. During Passover, we officially declare that the rainy season of winter is over and the beginning of a dry summer is at hand. Well, at least that's the case in Eretz Israel, but not necessarily this year here in California, separate matter. Fearful of the devastating impact of a drought, we daily pray for rain so as to bring our dry fields back to life, kind of like a resurrection, you might say. Well, it just so happens that bringing the dead to life is precisely what this week's Haftarah is all about. As the prophet Ezekiel describes how the valley of dry bones can be restored to life, bone to bone to bone. Just as the Jews in Babylonian captivity were being told by God that their national life would be restored. So our words might be prayers for moisture, but our thoughts are thoughts of national rebirth. But now we come to the deepest mystery with which this week's special Torah reading from Exodus chapter 34 presents us. First of all, what does the number 13 call to mind? 13? Hey, 13, very powerful in Jewish thought, right? Bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, 13. But there are also the 13 tribes of Israel. Wait, Stan, 13 tribes, there are 12 tribes. Well, actually, if you count accurately, there are 13, because Joseph is not a tribe, and his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, each are tribes. There are 13 tribes among the 12 tribes of Israel. Stick to me. There's more. So, what's the last word of the Shema? Echad. Right. Very good. And if you apply gematria to the last word of the Shema, to Echad, assigning each letter a numerical value, Aleph 1, Chet 8, Dalet 4, 1 plus 8 plus 4 equals 13. So the only word in the Shema that describes God's essence comes up with 13. But wait a minute. AHAVAH, love, Aleph Hey, Vav Hey, 1, 5, 6, 1, yields 13 again. God is love, and God is one. And the mystery of God's essence is therefore carefully wrapped up in the number 13. Keep going. And now to the heart of the matter. Back to Exodus chapter 24, our Torah reading for Shabbat Shalom Pesach. Verses 6 through 8 contain God's answer to Moses when Moses asked to see God's face. Now we know these two verses very well. They give a list of what we call the attributes of God's mercy. You want to guess how many attributes are listed in those two verses? Of course, you're right. There are 13 attributes which uniquely dare to describe God. The 13 attributes are so powerful that one is not allowed to recite them other than in the presence of a minion. The 13 attributes are so powerful that some rabbis have declared that if God did not first speak them here in our text, we would be forbidden to speak them. The 13 attributes are recited every time a worshiper opens up their broken heart and seeks healing from God. The 13 attributes are so powerful that they occupy a position of almost limitless sanctity. Where are they? They're found right at the heart of the Ne'ilah service that ends Yom Kippur. 13. We are in the midst of Passover. And we think of redemption. We think of freedom. We think of the birth of the Jewish people as a nation. But our journey down that rabbit hole asks us to learn how to properly address each other, to learn of the mystical power of sheaves of grain, to acknowledge how Judaism sets resurrection and rebirth at the very heart of its teachings, and to follow the number 13 as it opens up for us some startling new doors. Got to hold on to all that if we ever want to get out of the rabbit hole. Shabbat Shalom. Moadim l'simcha. See you next week.